Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. You've probably heard 100 different stories about ghosts, demons, and things that go bump in the night. But just imagine for a second, what if there was a place, a real place, that didn't need magic, or a secret door, or some twisted ritual to get into? All it takes is one wrong step, one wrong turn, and just like that, you're gone. Erased from our world in an instant. There's no day or night in this place. Just endless hallways wrapped in the same sickly yellow wallpaper, stretching on forever, fluorescent lights buzzing and flickering overhead. And a silence so heavy, so complete, that it starts working on your mind before you even realize it. But here's the part that really gets under your skin. You never know if you're alone in there, or if something's been watching you this entire time. The scariest thing about the Backrooms was never the monsters. It's the place itself. The harder you try to find a way out, the deeper it pulls you in. That's exactly why almost nobody who ends up there ever makes it back. And on the rare chance someone does return, they're never the same person who walked in. That's the reason the Backrooms has become one of the internet's most disturbing and mysterious urban legends for years now. But the question still lingers. Is this just some story people made up? Or is it a glimpse of something real, hiding just behind the world we think we know? Something we haven't figured out yet. So in today's video, we're breaking down the full story of Backrooms 2026. We'll dig into the real mystery buried underneath this world and why every new level seems to get more dangerous than the one before it. Stick around till the end, because trust me, every scene that's coming is more unsettling than the last. The movie opens on a guy named Naren Warren. He's out of breath, sprinting, and there's pure panic written all over his face, like he's been running for his life from something, and it's been chasing him for a while. Naren works for Async Corporation. He's an explorer, the kind of guy sent into these strange, endless yellow rooms to document what's actually down there. And his camera's rolling the entire time, live, uncut, capturing every single second of whatever's about to happen to him. And then Naren sees something the movie deliberately keeps hidden from us. That choice alone makes this opening hit harder, because half the time, what you don't see is way scarier than anything they could have put on screen. Whatever it is, it's enough to send him bolting, camera in hand, running like his life depends on it, because it probably does. Mid-sprint, he spots some cables running along the floor, and when you're trapped somewhere like this, any lead feels like a lifeline, so Naren follows them. They lead him straight to a room where the cables all seem to originate from. The second he's inside, he grabs a heavy box off the floor and drags it in front of the door, barricading himself in, like he's absolutely certain something, or someone, is right behind him. And the movie doesn't need a single line of dialogue to make it clear, whatever's hunting him isn't just in his head. He flips on an old radio in the room and tries to reach his company. His voice is shaking. All he manages to get out is that he's trapped and he needs help, now. But before anyone can respond, he hears a scream, loud, sharp, close. He creeps toward it. Careful, cautious. And when he finally gets there, all he finds is a dead bird lying on the floor. And this is where the film drops its first real gut punch of a question. There's no sky here, no sunlight, no door leading back to the real world. So how did a bird even end up in a place like this? Before Naren, or us, can even process that, the dead bird suddenly springs back to life, flaps its wings, and flies off into nowhere. And just like that, in one single moment, the movie tells us everything we need to know. The Backrooms don't play by our rules. Life and death themselves might not even work the same way in here. Terrified, but still moving, Naren pushes forward. He comes across a patch of darkness up ahead, something unnatural, out of place. He steels himself and walks straight into it, and comes out the other side. There, he finds feathers scattered across the floor. The same bird's feathers, along with a few stray leaves from a tree. Which means somehow, traces of the outside world have made their way into this closed-off nightmare, but there's no explanation for how they got there. This is the moment the film really starts hammering home that this place isn't just a building, it's something far beyond anything we can actually make sense of. Naren keeps searching for a way out, but every time, he hits the exact same wall. He steps out of one room and lands straight into another. One hallway bleeds into the next, and the next. And every path he takes just folds him deeper back into the same maze. And that's probably exactly why they call it the Backrooms. Nothing in here moves you forward. It just pulls you further in. Eventually, he stumbles into a room with genuinely beautiful wallpaper, a stark contrast to everything else he's seen. For a second, it almost feels normal. He tries a door. It won't budge. So he's forced to head toward another room instead. And slowly, he disappears into the darkness. And the movie makes a deliberate choice here. It never shows us what happens to him next. That unfinished, dangling thread is exactly what makes this entire opening sequence so unsettling. Then, in the next beat, the reveal hits. Everything we just watched wasn't happening in real time. It was footage. a tape Naren recorded. And now, a group of people are sitting together, watching that exact same footage play back, and the shock on their faces says everything. Which tells us something important. Naren didn't just vanish. Whatever's caught on that tape is about to become the first real piece of this puzzle. The scene cuts, and we meet Dr. Mary, a therapist by profession. She's leaning against her car, quietly staring at her old, crumbling childhood home. On the pavement nearby, there's a faded handprint, hers, pressed into the concrete as a kid, probably with her mother. The film doesn't say a word about it, but it doesn't have to. It's obvious this house is tangled up in some deep, heavy memories for Mary. Memories that might be the exact thing still holding her back. The scene shifts to a furniture store. There's a sign out front with a cheerful, colorful parrot painted on it, doing its best to make everything look normal. But in this movie, normal never stays normal for very long. A car pulls up, and out steps the store's owner, Clark. Right after, we find Clark sitting down with Dr. Mary. Turns out, she's his therapist. He tells her he got into a massive fight with his wife, and she kicked him out of the house. When Mary asks what happened, he lays out the whole situation. His wife's working toward becoming a lawyer, which means he's the one covering everything. Her tuition, the bills, the entire household. His own dream was to become an architect, but life had other plans, and he ended up stuck running a furniture store instead. All that pressure built up until it pushed him toward drinking. And that same night, an argument that started over something as small as a broken glass spiraled completely out of control. Enough that he ended up walking out of his own home. This is where Mary drops something genuinely interesting. She tells him that people often get so tangled up in their own memories, in the story they've built for themselves, that they stop being able to see their own mistakes. That grip on the past is exactly what keeps them stuck. So Mary runs an exercise with him. She tells him to picture her as his wife and try apologizing, really meaning it. But instead of apologizing, Clark just goes right back to blaming her, insisting he didn't do anything wrong. And that's the moment his biggest flaw comes into full view. Instead of owning his part in anything, he shifts the blame onto someone else. And that exact trait is going to end up shaping some pretty major decisions down the line. Next, we catch up with Clark at his furniture store, shooting a promotional ad for the business. His employee Bobby is handling the camera, and assistant manager Kat is helping him pull it together. On the surface, this scene feels completely routine, but the movie's quietly doing something important here. It's laying the groundwork for these characters, because it won't be long before their lives collide with the exact same mystery we caught a glimpse of at the very start. A little later, Clark brings in an electrician friend of his. Ever since his wife kicked him out, he'd basically been crashing at the store, and for the past few days, the lights had been flickering non-stop. At first, it just looks like a basic electrical issue. But in horror movies, small glitches like this are almost never just small glitches. They're usually the first warning sign of something much bigger. The electrician heads down to the basement to check the fuse box. While he's working, he notices a set of switches that look completely different from the rest of the building's system. And here's the strange part. The panel won't even open. He can't figure out what these switches are even for. He goes ahead and fixes the regular lighting issue and heads out, but the movie deliberately keeps our attention locked on that mysterious electrical panel. It's clear this isn't the last we're going to hear about those switches. Meanwhile, we cut back to Dr. Mary. This time she's home alone, sitting in silence, completely lost in thought. There's an emptiness on her face that words really can't capture. Here's a woman who spends her days helping other people heal, and yet she's carrying wounds of her own that have never actually closed. The film pulls off a quietly powerful contrast here. The person whose whole job is guiding others out of their pain still can't find her own way out of the past. And maybe that's exactly why, when this mystery eventually reaches her, she won't approach it just as a scientist or a psychologist. She'll approach it as someone who's lived through her own version of being trapped. Back at the store, Clark's lying in bed watching TV when the screen suddenly cuts to black on its own. At the exact same moment, the store's lights start flickering wildly, switching on and off with no pattern at all. At first, it plays like nothing more than an electrical glitch. But the movie's already told us. This building is hiding something that a simple wiring problem can't explain away. Rattled, Clark walks out of the store and just starts driving, no destination in mind. Somehow, without even meaning to, he ends up parked right outside his own house. He pulls over and just sits there, staring at it from a distance. Deep down, he knows, if he just walked in and apologized to his wife, things could probably go back to how they were. But his pride won't let him do it. He's still convinced, deep down, that none of this was his fault. And this is the movie quietly making a point. Sometimes the thing that beats you isn't your worst enemy, it's your own ego. The next day, Clark's sitting alone in the store, no customers coming in, so to kill time, he starts sketching out a building design. And as the drawing takes shape, it becomes obvious. There's a genuinely talented architect buried inside this guy. If things had gone differently, he could have been designing buildings instead of selling furniture. The film lingers on this unfinished dream just long enough for us to feel exactly how much quiet regret he's been carrying around. Night falls, and Clark settles back in to watch TV. Out of nowhere, the screen flashes something strange for just a couple of seconds. That same yellow room, a shadowy figure standing outside of it, and a wire snaking out from under a door. Before he can even process what he saw, the TV shuts off again. On the surface, it looks like just another glitch. But we already know by now, this movie doesn't throw random frames at us for no reason. That flash is a preview of something coming. Clark heads back down to the basement to take another crack at the fuse box. This time, he accidentally messes something up bad enough that it kills the store's power for good. Frustrated, he's about to head back upstairs when something on the wall catches his eye. A thin, glowing line of light. One that definitely wasn't there before. He steps closer, slowly, and presses his ear to the wall, listening for any sign of someone on the other side. Nothing. Total silence. And then, in the next instant, something happens that he never could have imagined. He passes straight through the wall, like it isn't even there. On the other side is that same mysterious world we saw in Naren's footage at the start of the film. And with that, it's confirmed. Naren's story and Clark's story were never separate. They were always headed toward the same place. Clark looks around and finds himself surrounded by a massive pile of furniture, stacked up in what looks like some kind of storage dump. It's a strange sight, and it immediately makes you start wondering why. As he pushes forward, all he finds is room after room after room, one opening into the next, then into another. And the harder he tries to find a way out, the more twisted and confusing the path gets. This is where the movie starts revealing something genuinely fascinating about how the backrooms actually work. It seems like this place somehow latches onto each person's past, their memories, their life, who they are. Which might explain why the very first thing Clark runs into is a giant pile of furniture, because his entire identity is wrapped up in that furniture store. The film doesn't spell this out completely yet, but you start to get the sense that the backrooms doesn't look the same for everybody who ends up there. Clark keeps moving carefully, and then he hears something strange, a voice, cycling through different languages, repeating the word welcome over and over. In a place where there isn't a single other person in sight, hearing a voice welcoming you in is somehow more unsettling than silence would have been. He follows the sound, and it leads him to an old advertising board with a speaker mounted on top. The speaker's wire runs off into a locked room nearby. And if you remember, this is the exact scene Clark caught a flash of earlier on his flickering TV screen, which means the TV wasn't showing him the future, it was showing him this exact place. Clark tries everything to get that door open, but it won't budge. He's about to give up and turn back when he spots another door built into the wall, with a piece of paper wedged underneath it. This one opens. Inside, there's a bunch of old stuff scattered around, and a bag sitting off to the side. When Clark opens it up, he finds it's packed with videotapes. And tucked in among them is an ID card. It's got the Async Corporation name printed on it, and the second Clark reads the employee's name, he freezes. The name is Naren. It's the same explorer we watched vanish into the backrooms right at the start of the movie. And with that, the mystery just got a whole lot deeper. It means Naren really did make it this far. But what happened to him after this? That answer's still buried somewhere in this maze, waiting to be found. Clark leaves the bag behind and keeps going, squeezing through a narrow passage that opens up on the other side. On the ground, he spots a pair of shoe prints. It looks like someone tried to make a run for it from here, but for whatever reason, they left their shoes behind. It's a small detail, but it says a lot. Clark isn't the first person to end up in this place. Nearby, he notices a strikingly beautiful chair sitting off to the side. He edges closer, trying to peek through a doorway beyond it, when suddenly he hears footsteps. That single sound is enough to drain every ounce of color from Clark's face. He doesn't hesitate for even a second. He bolts back through the narrow passage and makes it back to the big furniture hall. Now he's got exactly one goal: get out no matter what. But the backrooms does what it always does, and keeps him wandering, disoriented, lost. After what feels like forever, he finally stumbles back onto that same mysterious wall, passes through it, and finds himself right back in his own basement. Now the film locks in a pretty crucial detail. As far as we know right now, that wall is the only connection between the two worlds, the one and only way in or out of the backrooms from the real world. But Clark's curiosity ends up winning out over his fear. Before long, he's back through that same wall, and this time, he comes out carrying a heavy lampstand. His thinking's pretty simple. If whatever's lurking in that darkness ever shows itself, at least he'll have something to defend himself with. That night, Clark doesn't sleep. He sits up against the wall all night long, gripping that lampstand tight, like he's absolutely certain that whatever's on the other side could try crossing over into his world at any second. The next scene introduces us to Dr. Phil. He's carefully studying the footage Clark recorded. Phil's also part of Async Corporation, and this is where things start clicking into place. This whole thing might not be some random accident. Based on everything we've pieced together so far, it looks like Async has been researching the Backrooms for quite some time. There's a real chance they're the ones who planted those cameras, and that those strange switches in the basement trace back to this same company. In other words, what Clark thinks is a bizarre coincidence might actually be him stepping right into the middle of a much bigger experiment. We cut back to Clark and Mary. Clark walks her through everything that happened the night before, insisting he saw an entire other world on the other side of that wall. But Mary doesn't buy a word of it. As far as she's concerned, Clark's still not fully out of the fog from the stress and the drinking, so she chalks the whole thing up to him seeing things. Clark pulls out a hand-drawn map of the Backrooms to back himself up. You can tell he made a real effort to understand and remember what he saw. But a map alone isn't going to convince anyone that an impossible world like this actually exists. After all, Mary hasn't seen a shred of it herself. So Clark tells her, "Come with him, and see it with your own eyes." And once she believes him, she's going to owe him an apology. It's a small line, but it says a lot. He still can't bring himself to own up to his own mistakes, yet he's more than happy to demand one from someone else. The movie keeps circling back to this exact flaw, because it's really the defining crack in who Clark is. After that, Clark heads over to talk to his employee Bobby and assistant manager Kat. He tells them he needs them to stay late at the store tonight and help him out. Both of them flat out refuse at first. Honestly, who could blame them, given the story he's telling? But after enough convincing, he manages to talk them into it, and asks them to bring a camera along too. By evening, Bobby and Kat show up at the store. Clark takes them down to the basement and explains the mysterious wall. He'd already marked it beforehand, just to make it easier to show them what he means. Both of them are still visibly nervous. Then, without hesitating, Clark walks straight through the wall. That's enough to tip Bobby's curiosity past his fear. If Clark can just walk through solid wall, maybe there really is something on the other side. Kat's still not convinced, but Bobby manages to talk her into it too, and eventually, all three of them step through into the Backrooms. Once inside, Clark finds a room and ties one end of a rope tightly around a heavy bed frame, tying the other end around Bobby's waist. He hands him the camera too, so that whatever happens down there gets caught on tape. The plan is simple. Bobby's going to head down into the laundry area below and check it out. The moment Bobby climbs down, he's surrounded by towering piles of dirty laundry. At first glance, it looks completely empty down there. But the camera catches something for just a split second. A shadowy, human-shaped figure standing behind him. And here's the unsettling part. Bobby doesn't notice it at all. It's a brilliant visual trick from the film. Sometimes the danger's standing right there, and we have absolutely no idea. Further ahead, there's a room where the lights won't stop flickering. Bobby edges toward it carefully. Suddenly, his eyes land on something the film still won't fully show us, and in that same instant, all the color drains from his face. Panicking, he screams up to Clark to pull him up. Now. Clark and Kat grab the rope and start hauling with everything they've got. But then, from the other side, something starts yanking back. Hard. This is the first real moment we understand just how powerful this entity actually is. Way beyond anything human. After a serious struggle, they finally manage to drag Bobby back up. Gasping for air, all he can get out is that he saw someone down there. But he doesn't even get a second to catch his breath. Out of nowhere, that same invisible force yanks the rope again, and this time it drags Bobby straight back down. Clark and Kat grab onto him, fighting to hold him in place, but the pull is so violent that the heavy bed frame the rope's tied to actually starts sliding across the floor. Within seconds, the bed, Clark, and Kat all go tumbling down into the laundry area below. The fact that something could drag a piece of furniture that heavy without breaking a sweat makes one thing painfully clear. Whatever they're dealing with isn't remotely human. The second they hit the ground, all three of them spot fresh blood spreading across the floor. But Bobby's gone. The blood trail makes it obvious. Something dragged him off, deeper into the dark. Off in the shadows, they catch a glimpse of that same mysterious entity, hauling Bobby's body away. Without a second thought, Kat takes off running after it. Maybe some part of her still believes Bobby's alive. Clark makes a different call. He runs, for himself. And on his way out, he grabs Bobby's camera. It's another moment that says everything about who Clark really is. When things go bad, his first instinct isn't to save anyone else. It's to save himself. Running blind, Clark ends up in a room with a fully decorated Christmas tree sitting inside it. But the real horror in that room has nothing to do with the tree. It's the two figures sitting beside it. A strange man in a wheelchair, and a woman next to him. Both of them look completely, deeply wrong. The second Clark spots them. He panics and bolts without looking back. Eventually, he stumbles into a space that looks like an old indoor swimming pool. Tables and chairs are scattered around, like the place used to be full of people. Now, it's just dead silence. Clark sets his camera down on a table and starts calling out for Kat. That's when he hears her voice. It sounds like it's coming from right next to him, but she's nowhere in sight. Kat tells him she's standing right in front of him, that there's just a pane of glass between them, and she can see him perfectly clearly. But all Clark sees is a solid wall. And this is where the movie peels back another layer of what the Backrooms actually is. It's not just the rooms that shift and change. Reality itself doesn't stay consistent from one angle to another. Two people can be standing in the exact same spot and be looking at two completely different worlds. Right as Clark's fully locked in on Kat's voice, something creeps up behind him, quiet, unnoticed, and picks up his camera. Kat sees the whole thing happen through the glass. She starts frantically trying to warn him, but Clark has no idea what's about to happen right behind his back. And that's exactly the gut punch moment the movie chooses to cut away on. The story now takes a hard turn. We find Mary caught in a dream, pulled back into her childhood. Her mother had been dealing with severe agoraphobia, so afraid of the outside world that she wouldn't even let Mary leave the house. She'd gone as far as papering over the windows, so Mary couldn't even look outside. Slowly, that same fear took root inside Mary too. The film doesn't spell it out, but the message lands anyway. Fear isn't always something you're born with. Sometimes it's something that seeps into you just from living alongside it. Mary jolts awake. She grabs her phone and finds a voicemail from Clark. His voice sounds completely different this time. Calm, almost too calm. All he says is, "I've found my peace." The moment she hears it, the color drains from her face. As a therapist, she knows exactly what a message like that can mean. She's terrified Clark might have done something drastic. Without wasting a second, she heads straight for his store. Meanwhile, we cut back to Dr. Phil. He's relaxing at home with his family, watching TV, when Clark's furniture store commercial pops up on the screen. The instant he sees it, his face shifts, pure shock. It's like he's finally putting together something he's been waiting on for a long time. The film doesn't spell everything out here, but based on what we've pieced together, it looks like this is the exact moment Async Corporation realizes the entry point into the Backrooms has been sitting in Clark's basement all along. Which might explain those mysterious switches, wiring, and cameras already installed down there. This could have been set up long before Clark ever found it. In other words, Clark's discovery might not have been nearly as personal or as accidental as he thought it was. Back at the store, Mary arrives. She heads straight down to the basement, and the first thing she sees is a whiteboard covered in a full map of the Backrooms, the one Clark pieced together from memory. Right next to it is the same wall, still marked with his notes. Up until now, Mary had written all of this off as delusion, but now she wants to know the truth for herself. Hesitant, she reaches her hand out toward the wall. The moment her hand makes contact, it passes straight through, no resistance at all. And just like that, every doubt she had is gone. Fear is written all over her face, but her curiosity's stronger now. She works up the nerve and steps through the wall herself, crossing into the Backrooms for the very first time. Here's the interesting part. This time, there's no towering pile of furniture waiting on the other side. Nothing like what Clark saw. Which brings the film back to that same idea one more time. The Backrooms doesn't look the same to everyone who walks in. It seems to reshape itself based on whoever's stepping through, their memories, their experiences, whatever's going on in their head. Mary keeps pushing forward and eventually finds her way into a room lined with CCTV monitors. That same massive pile of furniture is here too, nearly blocking off the path ahead. A little further in, she notices a large board covered in sketches. Walls, doors, windows, scattered everywhere. And mixed in among them are these unsettling, distorted shapes, like someone had been trying for a long time to make sense of this place, and never quite managed to. That's when she spots something familiar, the same logo from Clark's furniture store, the parrot on it, gripping something in its claws. It's a small visual detail, but it says a lot. The Backrooms doesn't just pull in people's memories, it reaches into the tiny, everyday details of their lives too. Right then, Clark shows up. And now he tells Mary something that might be the single most important rule in this entire movie. He explains that the Backrooms isn't a normal place. Anything can exist here at any given moment. This world isn't fixed. Whoever walks in, the Backrooms starts reshaping itself around their past, their memories, their life. Which means two completely different people can walk into the exact same place and end up looking at two completely different worlds. Mary's still trying to wrap her head around what he's saying when that same eerie sound reaches her ears again. It's the same entity that dragged Bobby into the laundry room. Mary immediately starts moving toward the sound. But out of nowhere, Clark grabs her from behind by the throat, and within seconds, she's unconscious. It's a genuinely shocking moment, and it makes something else pretty clear too. Clark isn't acting like himself anymore. Maybe the Backrooms is slowly getting inside his head. Or maybe something else entirely is changing him. The film doesn't answer that yet, but it plants real doubt in our minds. The moment Mary goes under, the film pulls us into her past. We watch her mother's mental state deteriorate more and more over time, until eventually she had to be hospitalized. After that, Mary spent most of her life essentially alone. And that's exactly why she's so good at understanding other people's pain, because she grew up carrying her own weight of isolation and mental struggle. When we return to the Backrooms, something genuinely fascinating happens. Pieces of Mary's entire life start materializing around her. Her childhood, memories, places she used to live. Which confirms something huge. The Backrooms isn't just a maze of rooms. It reaches directly into people's memories and builds an entirely new world out of them. A world that's far more terrifying than anything they've ever known. When Mary finally wakes up, she finds herself tied to a chair, and what's waiting in front of her is even more disturbing than anything she's seen so far. There's an extremely overweight, badly disfigured man sitting nearby. Next to him are the same man and woman Clark spotted earlier by the Christmas tree. It's like time doesn't just stand still in this place. It slowly warps people into something else entirely. And Clark? He's still holding on to the same stubborn belief. As far as he's concerned, he's never made a single mistake in his entire life. At this point, it doesn't even feel like a personality trait anymore. It's who he's become. Now Clark tells Mary the most horrifying truth about the Backrooms. He explains that all these disfigured people used to be human. Over time, the Backrooms turned them into replicas. But the place can't hold on to a complete memory of anyone, so the copies slowly degrade, warping and twisting until their bodies end up looking the way they do now. The idea alone is chilling. The Backrooms doesn't just trap people. It builds broken, incomplete copies of them out of fragments of memory. Clark goes on to say that these replicas don't feel pain, joy, fear, or anything at all. They just exist. Like every trace of their humanity has been stripped away completely. And, to prove his point, without even flinching, he plunges a knife straight into the throat of the heavyset man. The disturbing part is, the man's face doesn't register a single flicker of pain. That's when it really sinks in. The Clark standing here isn't the same man anymore, not mentally. And just when you think it can't get more unsettling, the film pushes further. Clark casually mentions these replicas can be eaten. He reaches straight into the man's stomach and pulls out something that looks like bread, sets it on a plate, and serves it, to himself and to Mary. This moment isn't just there to disturb us. It shows how completely Clark has absorbed the rules of this place as normal. Something that would make any regular person recoil in horror is for him now just an everyday thing. And it doesn't stop there. The things he casually knows about this world are things no ordinary person should ever be able to know. It's like the Backrooms hasn't just trapped him, it's absorbed him, or slowly turned him into something more like itself. Then comes another gut punch. Clark reveals that he killed Kat because she wanted to leave. And he hid her severed head inside the fridge. This is the moment it becomes undeniable. Clark hasn't just changed, he's becoming part of the Backrooms itself. After that, he tears a clump of hair off the disfigured woman sitting nearby and places it on Mary's head, telling her to play the part of his wife. The whole scene is deeply uncomfortable, but it lays bare exactly how far gone Clark's mind really is. Instead of facing reality, he's built himself an entire world where everything bends to what he wants. He sits down across from her and starts replaying that same night, the night he came home drunk. He says it again, that he'll never apologize to his wife, because it was his house. This time, Mary cuts him off. Very calmly, she tells him his biggest mistake was never the drinking. His biggest mistake was that he never once took responsibility for anything he did wrong. She reminds him, he blamed the drinking on his job, blamed the job on his wife, and when he never became the architect he dreamed of being, he blamed that on his wife too. What Mary says here isn't just meant for Clark, it lands like the entire message of the movie. Real change is impossible until a person can actually own their mistakes. Then she says something that cuts straight through him. She tells him, if you truly believe you've never done anything wrong, then you don't need any kind of healing at all. Stay exactly the way you are. Maybe for the first time that actually lands with Clark. After a long stretch of silence, he finally breaks. He admits it. He made mistakes. This is the exact moment Mary's been waiting for since the very beginning. But then Clark says something else. He admits he doesn't want to leave anymore. For the first time in his life, he says, he's found real peace. No fighting here, no responsibilities, no noise, and more than anything, the one thing he never got to have has finally come true. He always wanted to be an architect, and because the Backrooms reshapes itself around a person's memories and desires, this world has given him exactly what he'd been chasing his whole life. And that's when it really clicks. The Backrooms doesn't just trap people through fear. It uses their deepest desires against them too. Mary tells him that now that he's finally owned his mistake, he's on the right path. There's just one thing left to do. Let her go, so she can get them both out of here. Clark's just about to untie her when the disfigured woman nearby suddenly bolts in pure terror, like she's sensed something even more dangerous approaching. And then, stepping out of the darkness, the entity finally reveals itself. This time, we see it clearly. It looks like some kind of demonic parrot. That design isn't random at all. Clark's furniture store logo was a parrot too, which is exactly why the entity has taken on that shape. But that doesn't mean it's just some figment of Clark's imagination. In truth, this entity is a fusion of the fear, anger, hatred, loneliness, and broken emotions of every single person who's ever wandered into the backrooms. Clark's emotions just happen to be the strongest of them all, which is why his influence shows up so clearly in its form. Clark isn't scared at all when he sees it. All he says is, "There's nothing left to change. Everything's fine now." It's like the entity actually understands him. It seems to realize Clark isn't trapped here anymore. He wants to stay. The film gives us one more interesting layer to this creature here. On the surface, it looks like a savage monster, but there's a strange, childlike quality underneath the violence. It almost feels like it wants to be close to people, to connect with them. But every time people see it and run in terror, that same desire slowly curdles into violence. Maybe that's exactly why it never hurt Clark to begin with. But then the film delivers one more gut punch. The entity lifts Clark up in its arms, in the exact same pose as the parrot on his store's logo, clutching something in its claws. It's a subtle but brilliant visual payoff, one the film's been quietly building towards since the very beginning. Clark thinks he's finally safe, but a second later, the entity sinks its teeth violently into his neck. Mary watches the entire thing unfold right in front of her. Terrified, she doesn't look back. She just runs. Mary's sprinting with everything she's got, but the entity refuses to let up. Within moments, it's closing in on her. Cornered, she's forced to fight back. They struggle, and somehow, she manages to break free and get away. Now she has exactly one goal: get out of the backrooms, no matter what it takes. Still running, she ends up back in that same massive room, buried in furniture. It's like this place keeps pulling her back to the same spot no matter which way she turns. There she spots a large advertising board, wired up with cables, the same kind of setup we've caught glimpses of before. Frantic, Mary keeps searching for a way out, but the backrooms, as always, refuses to give her a clean path. Then, the demonic parrot entity shows up in front of her again. This time, Mary doesn't run. She grabs a nearby towel stand and swings at it with everything she's got. In the middle of the fight, they both crash into the advertising board, and out of nowhere, some kind of system built into it activates on its own. A second later, a gas-like spray starts filling the entire room. The film doesn't spell this out directly, but everything we've seen so far points to one conclusion. This security system was likely installed by Async Corporation ahead of time. Probably designed so that if anyone made it this far, the spray could knock them out and make them easy to capture. Which tells us something bigger. The company wasn't just observing the backrooms. They were prepared for exactly this kind of situation. Mary keeps running, trying to dodge the spray. But before long, she loses her footing and hits the ground. The entity starts closing in on her, slow and deliberate. For a second, it looks like there's no way out, but at the last possible moment, Mary pulls out a small stone from her pocket, the one with her childhood handprint pressed into it, the keepsake she's been carrying with her this entire time. Without thinking twice, she starts smashing it into the entity's face, over and over. It doesn't feel like just a moment of self-defense. It feels like Mary is turning her own past into a weapon. Her whole life, that past had weighed her down, held her back. But in this one moment, it's the exact thing that gives her the strength to fight. The entity flinches back for a moment, and Mary bolts, ducking into an extremely narrow passage. The entity follows, but its massive body simply can't fit through the gap. For the first time, it actually looks like Mary might make it out alive. But then a brand new threat appears. Out of nowhere, company employees start pumping a heavy spray into that same narrow passage using canisters. Mary's already exhausted. The moment the spray hits her, her eyes grow heavy, and within seconds, she's completely unconscious. The company's employees pick her up and carry her away. When Mary starts drifting back into consciousness, she finds herself in a different room. The effects of the spray haven't fully worn off yet, so everything looks blurry and distorted. She can make out the shapes of doctors and staff moving around her, but she can't clearly recognize a single face. The film keeps everything deliberately hazy here, so we're left just as disoriented as Mary is. The scene shifts. We're shown a series of medical images, skeletal scans, brain scans. Slowly, it becomes clear the company has been running all kinds of tests on Mary. They're not just interested in her story. They want to understand exactly what the backrooms does to the human mind and body. After some time, Mary fully regains consciousness. Two doctors are walking her from one room to another. Along the way, her eyes catch something, a covered body lying nearby. She stops, trying to get a better look, but the doctors quickly steer her attention elsewhere, making sure she doesn't get the chance to see it. The film doesn't outright confirm it, but the implication is pretty clear. That covered body was the entity, and somehow, the company actually managed to capture it. If that's true, it changes everything. Async isn't just studying the backrooms. They're experimenting on whatever lives inside it. After this, we're back with Dr. Phil. This time, he sits down to interview Mary directly. The first thing Mary asks is simple. Are you going to let me go? Phil doesn't answer. His silence says more than words ever could. Then, for the first time, he actually opens up about the backrooms. He tells her it's not some myth or urban legend, it's completely real. And the truly alarming part is that it's still growing, spreading. But to this day, nobody's figured out how it forms, why it keeps expanding, or what its actual purpose even is. That's exactly why Async Corporation keeps sending people in. There's really only one goal: gather as much information as they possibly can. Finally, Phil asks Mary for her help. If she can walk them through everything she saw, heard, felt, and understood while she was in there, in as much detail as possible, it might bring them one step closer to actually cracking this mystery. And this is where the movie makes something clear. The real story might not be over yet. If anything, the mystery of the backrooms is only just beginning to unravel. Then the film takes us back into the backrooms one final time. We see Mary's replica. Her old home is standing in front of her, except now it's completely broken down, decayed. Nearby, there's a distorted copy of her childhood home too. These are the exact places tied to her deepest memories. And now it's undeniable. The backrooms doesn't just trap people, it absorbs their entire lives, their memories, and every place that ever meant something to them. And then, we see another replica of Mary herself. But this isn't the Mary we've followed the entire movie. Her appearance has completely transformed. She looks less like a person now and more like some kind of demonic presence. It's a chilling suggestion. The Backrooms has already recorded a version of Mary, made her a permanent part of itself. Even if she gets out of this place, some piece of her is staying behind forever. And that's where the film leaves us with its biggest, most unsettling revelation. At its core, the Backrooms is a world that copies the memories, emotions, and layers of every single life that ever passes through it. And based on those copied fragments, it keeps reshaping its rooms, its hallways, its entire reality. But that copy is never perfect. Over time, those memories start breaking down, distorting, shifting, and that exact deterioration is what gives birth to those horrifying replicas and disfigured people we've watched throughout the entire film. Which means the real horror was never some monster. It's our own fractured memories. The ones the Backrooms could never quite piece back together correctly. And that's exactly why the Backrooms looks different to every single person who enters it. Clark got a world built out of furniture and unfinished dreams. Mary got pulled back into her childhood, her old homes, her buried memories. And Naren, whatever he saw in there was probably something else entirely, something all his own. Everyone who steps into this place brings their own personal version of it with them. And honestly, that might be the most fascinating thing about this whole movie. The Backrooms was never just a place. It's a mirror, reflecting back every memory, every regret, every fear, every unfinished desire we spend our whole lives running from. And the second you set foot inside, all of it is standing right there in front of you, whether you're ready for it or not. And that, guys, wraps up the full story of Backrooms 2026 and its ending, explained. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to smash that like button. And if you're new here, go ahead and hit subscribe, because we're always bringing you full breakdowns of the most mysterious and terrifying movies out there. See you in the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.